Thank you, and good evening and welcome everyone to this meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee, especially those members of the public who are watching the streaming online. I'm Councillor Clive Hooker and I'm chairman of this planning committee. The members of the committee attending this evening are Councillor Phil Barnett, Henry Cole, Caroline Culver, Dennis Bennyworth, Andy Moore, who's substituting for Adrian Abbs, Tony Vickers, who's our vice chairman, and Howard Wollaston. The officers attending and advising and supporting this the meeting this evening are Simon Till, Sian Cutts and Cheyenne Kirby. They're our planning officers. Paul Goddard, our highways engineer. Kim Mayer, who's our legal advisor, and Jenny Legg, who will clerk the meeting. I'm also assisted by Gordon Oliver, who will be the Zoom meeting host. Members, before we start the meeting and to be consistent with our council meetings, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which require us to uphold certain standards, those being respectful to each other and to officers and members of the public present. Members may not always agree with one another or with the officers' recommendations, but I would ask that in any disagreements, we are always respectful of others' views and position. I would ask that we are mindful that officers are required to act professionally and impartially at all times in determined applications and in providing advice to this committee, and that they are expected to conduct themselves in a manner which preserves this position of impartiality in all they say and do. We all therefore need to maintain mutual trust and an understanding of the position of the legal and planning officers in this committee and of each other. Thank you, members. I will now ask Mrs. Legg, our clerk, to remind members and those others attending about the way we conduct our council meetings on Zoom. Thank you, Mrs. Legg.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Standard Zoom reminders will be shared on screen shortly. Here they are. In addition to these points, if it becomes necessary for any members to telephone into the meeting, they won't be able to signal to speak. Therefore, once everyone has raised a Zoom hand and spoken, I will ask the chairman to invite anyone who is joined by telephone to speak in order. Voting on the planning applications will take place via a named vote. Members will be asked in turn by the legal advisor how they wish to vote, by stating they are for or against the proposal, or if they wish to abstain. Please remember to unmute yourself when voting. Any other votes will be conducted via a show of actual hands during the meeting. Unless the committee asks for the vote to be recorded, the outcome of the named vote will not appear in the minutes, so anyone wishing their vote to be recorded must indicate this before the vote is taken. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the chairman will adjourn and advise the committee of the revised time and date of the meeting. If it's a short adjournment, you'll be able to rejoin the Zoom meeting, otherwise a fresh appointment will be sent out. Do members have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted before we proceed?
No, everybody seems quite happy. That was a very good explanation of how we're going to control things today. So, members, before I move on,
I think that was Councillor Moore put his hand up.
Okay, Councillor Moore, yeah.
Sorry, the raised hand facility is not available. Is that right? So no, it is as I've just done it. A physical hand.
The raised hand will be on anything you'd like to bring up during the debate. The minutes, I will take a raised hand.
Thank you. I can't seem to find that facility on my version of the
right.
Zoom
Before we go any
Sorry.
further, I'll ask Mr. Oliver just to talk you through it and see if you can find the raised hand, blue, yellow raised hand option, because that's going to be awkward for you.
The control should be at the bottom taskbar of your screen.
Yeah, got that. I've got participants share screen and record.
You should have a raised hand.
I am in the same situation now that Councillor Moore has mentioned this. I don't have a hand either.
With respect, Chair.
Or is it under reactions? Do you have a reactions button at the bottom?
That's the one that's missing, Mr. Oliver.
Yeah, I haven't got that.
I'm not sure what we can.
In your participants panel, if you click on participants, does it come up in there?
No.
No.
Let me have a bit of a Google.
Right, I will take on this one. I'm going to have to take a raised hand unless Mr. Oliver can get that up for us. But thank you for that out, Councillor Moore. Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole.
Oh, no, sorry, Chairman. I was just getting ready to raise my hand. I do have the raised hand button at the bottom of my screen.
Okay. Well, I'll take the. I'll certainly take the raised hands on the screen first, and I'll pick up the other hands, unfortunately, afterwards. Can we have some indication from everybody else who's got the raised hand in their? Howard, you got it? Yeah. If you put your hands, so I've got Councillor Pennyworth, Councillor Cutts, Cole, Wollaston, Till, Vickers, Barnett. So it's all apart from Moore and myself. Not that it's too important that I have mine up, I must admit, but Councillor Moore, I'll keep an eye on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on. Before I move on to the agenda items, I'd just inform you that I'd like to take a comfort break on conclusion of planning application number 2 on agenda item 4. That's the Enbourne Road, and we'll take a 10-minute break after that application. So we now move on to the agenda items. Item 1, apologies. Back to you, Mrs. Legg.
Sorry, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Abs, and he has been substituted for by Councillor Moore, and have also apologies by Councillor Cant, but there is no substitution for him today.
Thank you very much. So we will be sitting just one short tonight, but we do have a quorum. Item 2, approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February of this year. Members, do you have any observations of the minutes, please? Hand up. No, we're quite happy with your minutes, Mrs. Legg. That's very, very reassuring. So I think I will propose this time the minutes. Do I have a second? I do. Councillor Pennyworth. Members, all in favour of those minutes, that you consider them a true and accurate record of that meeting on the 3rd of Feb. If you could just raise your hands, please. 1, 2. Mrs. Mayor, are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. If I could see
Therefore,
you.
those minutes are approved, and I will sign them.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mayor. Right, item number 3 on the agenda, members' declarations of interest, please. If you could put up your hands on the screen, I'd appreciate it. Councillor, I'll take you first.
In respect of application 2 at Enbourne, I know the objector, but I've not been lobbied and I will participate in the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, firstly, I've been lobbied on the 1, 3 and 4, but I also need to make the normal statement. I'm a member of both Newbury Town Council and Green and Parish Council and their respective planning and highways committees, where obviously items 1, 3 and 4 were discussed. But tonight I'll weigh up all the evidence afresh before I make my vote on the appropriate actions.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've been lobbied on item 1, but I'll obviously make my mind up as a result of tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Pennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to say that I've been lobbied on item 2, and we'll be looking at this afresh this evening.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Vickers.
Exactly the same as Councillor Barnett. I think I've got nothing to add. I've been lobbied by both sides on number 1.
Okay.
I think that cancels itself out.
Thank you. Mr. Legg, did you manage to capture all that? Good. Okay. We'll move on then to...
Councillor Cole's had a hand up.
Yes, sorry, Chairman. I suppose
I was looking for your actual hand, not this one at this stage. Okay, back to you.
Sorry. I've been lobbied, as I think all members have, on the application for the site at Faraday Road.
Is this via the email?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for making that clear. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 4 of the agenda. That's the planning applications before us this evening. We do have 4. If you are attending, I'll go quickly through what they are. The first one is the land off Faraday Road and Kelvin Road in Newbury. The second one is the land west of the pumping station, Enbourne Row, Washwater, Enbourne. And then we have 2 applications with regards to the hostel stroke hotel at the Newbury Racecourse. So there are applications this evening. So for the benefit of those watching online, I'll briefly go out through the format of each application. The officers will present the application to the committee. The drawings, site plans and any deemed relevant material submitted on the planning file will be shown as part of their presentation. I will then invite the clerk to read out the 500-word submissions sent in by the various representatives. These will be shown on the screen for clarity from the following groups and in this order. Firstly, the Parish Council, then any objectors, then any supporters, and then the applicant agent. On conclusion of each of those possible 4 submissions, I will ask members if they have any questions of clarification on that submission or of the individual 500-word submissions, of which members of the committee will have received copies and will have read. If they have, the attendee will be invited into the meeting and answer those questions. If they do not have any questions, the attendees will not be invited into the meeting. On conclusion of answering questions, the attendees will be invited back into the waiting room. I hope that's quite clear for all viewing the meeting this evening. Then I will invite the ward members to speak. They will have 5 minutes to present their case. Members may then, on conclusion of their representation, ask questions of clarification of those members. The committee members will then have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the officer's presentation. The committee will then debate the application and the vote on the decision will be taken. So that is the format of the meeting this evening. So we go on now to our first application, which is application number 21/00114/COND1. This is for the land off Faraday Road and Kelvin Road at Newbury. And the details will be given us by Mrs. Cutts shortly, but in general, it's approval of the details reserved by condition 5. And this has come to committee due to 10 letters of objection from the public. So if I could ask Mrs. Cutts, please, to kindly give our presentation on the Faraday Road, Kelvin Road application. Mrs. Cutts.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is seeking a conditions discharge of condition 5, the outline planning permission, which granted permission for the mixed-use redevelopment of land at Kelvin Road and Faraday Road, adjacent to the A339 in Newbury, as seen on the location plan. Simon, if you can slip down to the photograph, I'll just describe through the application. That's slide 10. There is an extensive planning history on this site as set out within the officer's report. Of relevance this evening is the outline planning permission, which granted the redevelopment of the site consisting of offices, retail, an apart hotel, restaurant, hot food takeaway, a motor dealership, and 160 residential apartments, of which 48 of these units are affordable, and the provision of 330 car parking spaces, as shown on the site layout plan, which is slide 5. We can go back up to that. The update sheet has corrected an error in the report, and I can confirm that 160 dwellings are to be provided on the site, 48 of which are affordable units. If you just go up one more slide, we've got the site layout plan. That's it. Oh, and another one. Condition 4 that we're considering states that no development shall commence until a phasing programme of works has been submitted to and approved in writing by the council. Each phase shall indicate the location and number of affordable units to be provided on site. The development shall then be carried out in strict accordance with this phasing plan, unless otherwise agreed in writing by the local planning authority. For clarity, this relates to the whole scheme as approved and not just the dwellings. This application is seeking the approval of the phasing scheme to ensure that the affordable housing is delivered alongside the other elements of the development in accordance with Affordable Housing Policy CS6. It does not seek to alter or amend any other aspect of the extant planning permission. The phasing plan, we just go up one slide, has been provided. Now this plan shows all the phases together. And if we move down to the next slide, phase 1 is proposing the access into the site via Kelvin Road to the north, along that sort of pinky red bit, and then the creation of a site compound, which is highlighted in green on that plan. Phase 2 is the development of residential blocks H and I to the north of the site. This includes a total of 18 of the affordable units out of 61 residential units, which will be provided in this phase. Phase 3, which is the next slide, proposes the development of the mixed retail and residential block A, which is down on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Residential blocks B, C, and D, office block G, the car dealership, the access to Faraday Road, and the access in Fleming Road, which will then join the access which was provided in phase 1 from Kelvin Road. This will provide the remaining 30 of the approved affordable units. Within this phase, a total of 99 units, residential units will be provided, and this completes the residential development on the site, both affordable and market housing. The final phase is, which is shown on the next slide, will provide the approved office block E and the apart hotel block F, which you'll see is the middle of the site, which was in phase 1, the building compound. The update sheet includes a chart showing the number of market and affordable housing which will be provided within each phase. The Housing Development Officer was consulted on the application and raised no objection. It was indicated that the full requirement of affordable housing is provided within each phase of the development. As this is a conditions discharge application, the town and parish councils are not routinely consulted. However, as it is being discussed tonight, Newbury Town Council have commented in support of the application as detailed in the update sheet. They have commented that they are in full support of the redevelopment plans as they were in 2008 and 2012. They particularly welcome the pepper potting of the affordable housing throughout the development. They note the concern of the objectors about the drainage on the site and comment that the redevelopment will improve surface water drainage and risk of flooding to the affected properties through the implementation of SUDs as part of the development, but comment that this is not the right time and place to discuss this issue. They go on to say that the sooner the drainage and other pre-commencement conditions are discharged, the better, and the Town Council look forward to seeing this development being built out. The update sheet also amends the situation with regards to the public representations which were received on this application. With a conditions discharge application, there is no formal consultation process. However, we did receive a total of 14 representations. 13 of these were objections and 1 has been amended to be a neutral representation. The report summarises the objections, as you will see, and they state that there are concerns that there should have been an environmental impact assessment undertaken for this development, concerns about the Northbrook stream leading to overflowing, the lack of a holistic drainage plan for the London Road Industrial Estate redevelopment, concerns that there is insufficient information to assess the phasing plan, and they have made reference to the refusal of permission for the redevelopment of the newspaper house site and the appeal decision there. And there were also concerns about the redevelopment and relocation of the football ground. None of these objections relate to the heart of the matter at the heart of this condition, which is the provision of affordable housing throughout this particular development. The football ground is outside of this development, outside of this application site. And the sustainable drainage proposals are subject to another pre-commencement condition, which is yet to be discharged, and no application to discharge that condition has been submitted to date. The matter for decision this evening is whether the proposed phasing plan delivers the 48 housing units across the development in accordance with policy CS6. There is no scope to alter the permission or to refer to matters beyond this condition. The 48 units present a 30% provision of affordable housing, which accords with policy CS6. In returning to the phasing plan, if we just go back to that, phase one only provides, if we go down to the next one, next slide, phase one provides only the access road and the building compound, and so no housing, either affordable or otherwise, is provided within this first enabling phase of the development. Phase two provides 2 of the residential blocks at the north of the site, and that provides 18 affordable units out of the 61 units that will be provided within these 2 blocks, which is approximately 30% of the housing within that, of the affordable housing within that phase. Phase 3, as you can see, is the largest phase of the development, and this provides most of the commercial aspects of the redevelopment of the site. Again, this provides 30 of the affordable houses within a total of 99 dwelling units, which will be provided in this phase. And again, this is about 30% provision in accordance with policy CS6. The final stage is phase 4, which is the office block and apart hotel. And whilst it's desirable for the commercial and residential elements to be provided within each stage of the development, it's acknowledged that these blocks are in the middle of the site where the original compound was proposed to be. And there is an element of practicality with this being the final part of the development. Overall, the phasing plan proposed meets the requirement to provide affordable housing across the site. The submitted plans also meet the requirement. The schedule that was submitted with the application details where each of the affordable units will be provided within each block. And this meets the requirements of the condition and also policy CS6, and it is recommended that these details are approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Cutts. Thank you. Thank you. We have Mr. Goddard with us, and there's some high-vis issues here. Mr. Goddard, have you anything you'd like to bring to our attention, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The planning application is concerning the phasing of the development. The first phase is to provide the beginnings of the access road from Calvin Way, and the development proceeds sort of around the site. Following from that, we've no objection to how they propose to phase the development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Councillor Vickers, you've got your hand up.
Yes, it's really, I don't know if it's point of information or point of order, but as we're moving on to the speakers, I wished officers to explain why there is no speaker from the Town Council, as I know one of the objectors and maybe several other objectors are listening. You know, well, we discussed this, you and I wondered if this might be the point where it could be explained why the process has not.
I will take it. Mr. Till.
The Town Council were not a formal consultee on this application. The reason being that this is a discharge of conditions application. It is not an application that we would normally consult anybody but the key stakeholders who actually input into the technical matters of discharging that condition. So in this case, those key stakeholders would be housing and highways. But the Town Council have nevertheless seen the papers, and they have offered their comments, which are very helpfully provided for the update sheet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers, no discussion. Are you happy with that response?
Just to say that it's not quite true what's on the update
Okay,
sheet.
okay. I don't want to go into discussion on that now, but you've had an answer, and maybe bring that up at another time and another place. But I think the councillors of the Town Council have had a response. So I will now move on to the 500-word submissions, and I will ask Mrs. Legg to read these out. As we've heard, there's no submission from Newbury Town Council, but I do have a submission from an objector. Now, I think this is a submission by Mr. Arnold Ward on behalf of Alan Pearce. So, Mrs. Legg, if you could put that presentation up, please, and read it out to us. Thank you.
Chairman, just share my screen. Oh, one moment. Hopefully you can all see that. Is that big enough, everybody? Too
That's
big?
fine, thank you.
All right. Okay. So this is the objection from Arnold Ward. Your planning officer's report to the committee on this evening's determination to discharge conditions attached to an exam permission is incorrect in asserting that the appeals inspector's dismissal of the newspaper house appeal is not relevant. The inspector found that the sequential test in that case relied on the LREI's potential regeneration, but noted that a master plan is essential. This will have entailed environmental impact assessment and the design of a sustainable drainage system for the LRIE whole. The impact of flooding was the appeal inspector's primary consideration. The exam permission has a remarkably tangled and murky planning history, rendering any understanding reasoning underlying West Berkshire Council's determinations, or indeed the development being approved at each stage, very difficult. The officer's reasoning underlying these determinations could be interpreted as being deliberately obscure. The current application is the sixth in a sequence of applications modifying, varying and amending the terms of the 2016 appeal decision. Officers' reports fail to explain the reasons underlying determinations or are absent from the relevant WBC pages, as is the 2012 flood risk assessment relied upon in the conditions attached to the appeal decision and subsequent permissions. This is contrary to the government's 2019 guidance, Probity in Planning, which requires that decisions on planning applications are undertaken in a fair, impartial and transparent way. The courts have also found that local planning authorities should take extra care when determining applications involving development on their own land. The phasing of the site's development is not mentioned in the 2016 appeal decision letter or its schedule of conditions, nor is a phasing schedule published in the relevant WBC webpage. Condition 11 does, however, require that the development be implemented in accordance with the 2012 FRA, limiting the surface water runoff generated by the 1 to 100 year critical storm event to the greenfield runoff from the underdeveloped site and not increase the risk of flooding off-site to accord with the Environment Agency's specification. Further to the 2018 determination authorising the phased development of the site, a new condition 12 was inserted, now requiring that a sustainable drainage system be authorised for each phase individually. Despite no new flood risk assessment demonstrating that this is either feasible or desirable, adequate space is generally essential to sustainable drainage systems' ability to attenuate floodwaters. Proof that West Berkshire Council can exercise its flood risk control risk management function subject to the Flood and Water Management Act 2010 for the phased development has not been produced. Moreover, in the absence of a sustainable drainage system, the use of other people's land for floodwater storage is contrary to common land and cases of actual flooding and can give rise to liability in the torts of negligence and or nuisance. On the basis of the foregoing, I respectfully request that this application is refused. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Legg. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions of that submission? No, we don't. I think I'm right in saying we don't. So on behalf of the committee, Mr. Arnold, thank you for coming along this evening and thank you for your contribution. However, I won't be inviting you into the meeting. We now move on. We have nothing submitted with regards to supporting, and we don't, in fact, have any submission from the applicant. So we then move on to the ward members, and Mr. Oliver, if you could invite in Councillor Beck.
He should be in the meeting now if he starts his screen.
He is, thank you. Councillor Beck, if you'd like to turn on your video and unmute yourself, welcome. Councillor Beck, yeah, right, you're unmuted. If you can now just turn on your video, bottom left.
Which I can't find.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't find that. It's just
okay. Put your cursor down to the bottom beneath the icons, and then on the left-hand side you'll see mute, and the next one along you'll see stop video.
Yeah. So you
or video.
Anyway. Apologies for this. I don't know what's wrong.
Okay, I'm quite happy. Mrs. Mayor's happy. We can hear you. Do we need to see the councillor, Mrs. Mayor?
No, I think it's fine that we can proceed.
Okay. When you are ready, just a minute. When you're ready, I'll give you 5 minutes and I'll give you notification with 1 minute to go. And then you'll hear me say 10 seconds. 10 seconds, you'll hear me say, and in conclusion. You may not need the full 5 minutes, but that is the format. I'm sure you're very well aware of it. So when you're ready, Councillor Cole, I will start.
Right.
You're away.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, all. I speak to you tonight as someone who has been associated with this proposed development over a number of years. This application, as has been mentioned by the officer, is to determine the phasing of a previously approved application. It is not an application for planning permission. Permission for 19-00981 Outmage requires an application to be made in respect of drainage strategy and flood risk, as all detailed under 6.9 on page 223 of tonight's agenda. Residents in London Road are justifiably concerned with regard to the risks of flooding to their land. This is already taking place, and I ask you to appreciate their fears that flooding could increase to the extent that their houses are flooded as well. I support the officer's recommendation for approval. However, I ask you, members, that you consider including a condition that reinforces the necessity for a further application to be made in respect of drainage strategy and flood risk. This is a situation where belt and braces would not go amiss. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Members, do we have any questions of Councillor Beck's presentation? Just put your hand up. Your virtual hand. Yes, I do. Councillor Barnett. So, Councillor Barnett, you have a question for Councillor Beck.
Through you, Chairman. Councillor Beck, you obviously made reference to the possibility of the flood issue, although we're obviously not determining that tonight. Are you concerned about recent developments on the north side of the town where there could be a certain amount of surge of water from various quarters which could impinge on this particular site? Is that what you're referring
to? Chairman, if I can answer that, I'm not totally sure what Councillor is referring to, but
no, and in fact, I don't think
my principal concern is
Councillor Beck, not actually relevant to your presentation either. It's a question that can be answered at another time. So there is no requirement for you to answer that here. Thank you. Anyone else have a question for Councillor Beck, please? No, I think we're all clear. Councillor Beck, thank you very much for coming along tonight, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman.
Members, we now have the opportunity to ask questions of Mrs. Cutt's presentation to us. Has anybody got a question they'd like to ask Mrs. Cutt? I do. Councillor Wollaston. Thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm broadly supportive of this, but I am concerned that we ensure that the office content is not that subsequently converted into residential. I wonder if there's any way we can put a condition on that to take away the normal development rights. This is London Road Industrial Estate as a whole is meant to be an economic redevelopment area, not just residential. So I'm concerned about it.
Okay, thank you for the question. At this stage, because this is a conditions discharge application, we're not actually able to put any other conditions onto the permission, and we can only relate to matters with regards to this particular condition and the phasing in relation to the affordable housing. I note your concern about the requirement, the potential in the future for office development. I'm not sure if there are actually any conditions on the original outline planning permission or the later reserved matters which affect that. But as I say, even if there weren't, we wouldn't be able to put a subsequent permission on that today because we can't vary. This is discharging one particular condition and it doesn't alter any of the other conditions on the permission. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. Moving on, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Cutts, my question, I've been struggling to understand Mr. Ward's belief that drainage is linked to phasing. I can see a potential link, and so my question is, never mind the coherent drainage of the whole of the LRIE, but I can see a logic to actually sorting out how the surface water drainage on this site is redesigned before you actually agree the phasing, because you have to actually build the drains before you actually do anything much above ground. So it would have seemed logical to me to deal with the SUDS condition and sort out how the drainage is going to happen before the phasing. Why wasn't this done? And then I think we might have been in a different situation with regard to the objectors.
Okay, I understand your point. I see what you're coming from. We can only deal with applications in the order in which they are actually submitted to us. Even so, if members resolve to approve this phasing plan tonight, this sets out a phasing of which block, the order of the blocks that they're going to develop. However, they still have a number of other pre-commencement conditions which they need to discharge. And included in that are the sustainable drainage details. And so they will also need to discharge that before they can start work on site. Simon, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, I would, Chairman, Vice Chair, like the opportunity to add my comments on that. The sustainable drainage condition has requirements which will need to be discharged in order to commence works on site, regardless of the order that information is submitted in discharge of conditions. Also, in respect of phasing, it makes no odds whether the development is phased or not as far as that drainage condition is concerned, because the sustainable drainage will still need to link up and function for each part of the phasing and all parts of the phasing. It's not correct, Mr. Ward's assertion that designing one part of the sustainable drainage and then moving on to the next and then moving on to the next prevents us from considering the holistic aspect of drainage. I hope that helps.
So if I can have a supplementary, Chairman, will this actually all be sorted out when you do a construction management plan, which is probably one of the latest things, because that will have to encompass the order in which things are physically done, as opposed to the phasing is more to do with the rate at which things are handed over and completed, I imagine.
Certainly the construction management plan and the provision of works through the site, the development works, including the provision of sustainable drainage works, will have to interact with each other. So yes, as technical details, those have a necessary correlation.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. And you put your hand down. Wonderful. Short presentation from Mr. Goddard. Any observations on Mr. Goddard's? No. Jolly good. Members, I'm quite happy now to open this up to the debate, and who'd like to start, please? Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. This site has a tortuous planning history, and this discharge of condition before us tonight, I'm pleased to see that the applicant is delivering or proposing to deliver the 30% affordable housing on a brownfield site. I know the housing team and are happy with the way the phasing of this these affordable homes will be delivered, and so I am quite happy with this, as long as when we actually come to the construction stage, the commitment is still there and upheld. And therefore, Chairman, I would like to propose that we approve officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. A very early proposal, which I'm prepared to take, because as we know, if we take an early proposal, it doesn't give the opportunity to add any conditions. But in this situation, as Mrs. Cutts has said, we can't give any conditions. So I'm happy to take an early proposal. Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, members, like Councillor Cole, many years, in fact, I suspect it's probably close to a decade that I've been directly or indirectly associated with the earlier proposals on this site is also. I know we're looking very much at the phasing issue tonight, but, you know, time of several years, things do move on, and circumstances around the area move on, as well as obviously things which are the needs of the local community. And I really support what Councillor Wollaston has said, that I'm, you know, whilst supporting it, and I'm not at this moment in time going to second the motion, but I'm going to just make a couple of observations. I think Councillor Wollaston's spot on. You know, I'm deeply concerned. I don't want to see a total residential area, and I mean, it's not only the office area which could change unless we look very closely at how we're going to condition it, but also the dealership, the car dealership. I mean, we're moving on a completely different ballpark in the country, the needs, the requirements, and you know, like I said, you know, things have moved on a lot in the last year, yet alone 10 years. So I think we need to look very closely at not only the issue on the phasing, but also the actual mix. Obviously, I welcome the affordable housing and also the pet pocket inside, but it's just my little concern about the aspect to, in effect, what will be phase 4. That's all I would say, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I am happy to second the proposal. I've been, well, we've all been waiting, I think, 13 years and counting since the original outline planning application was approved unanimously, I believe, with some hesitation from planning policy because there was the housing. But nevertheless, as was stated by the inspector when it went to appeal, this does deliver a 10-fold increase in employment on the site, as well as the housing. And it's therefore, I think, an extremely good use of brownfield land in a sustainable location. I just would like to explain a little bit more about why there isn't a full 500-word statement, because what we did on the town council, which both councillors Bennis and Moore were present at on Monday, actually convene a special meeting to discuss this matter and one other that came up and needed urgent resolution, because a town and parish council, certainly ours, can't suddenly off the cuff respond to something when it appears on the district council's agenda, not in the time specified. But we felt this was an important matter because we want the affordable housing and the whole of the site to proceed. but we also understand the serious concerns that residents have about the drainage. So
Okay.
quite a lot of emails to sort out this issue, and I'm really pleased that we've got this far. If any members of the public who are Newbury Town residents are listening, we're quite happy to publish the full 500-word statement in support of the application that's before us tonight. And heard what everybody's had to say. I'm very pleased to basically do what I did on Monday for the Town Council and support the resolution by seconding it here. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And we've had a full explanation from Mr. Till as to the dealings and the contact with the Town Council. I think that's been answered. And we understand that you are supportive of it, the council is supportive of it. So,
but I do think the process needs to be reviewed, Chairman, about these applications where we can have 15 objectors without
the
council being made aware.
Vickers, the point is made, and I'm sure we all appreciate and take on board the issues of the Town Council. Mrs. Cutts, Mrs. Mayor, I'm quite happy how the debate's gone. I'm happy with the proposer of Councillor Cole and Councillor Vickers. With your legal advice, I think I can take this to recommendation. Are you happy for me to do that, Mrs. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Then the recommendation is for Head of Planning and Countryside be authorised to grant the planning application 21/00114 Con 1. This is for the land off Faraday Road and Kelvin Road for the conditions and phasing as we've discussed and presented to us this evening. So if I could ask Mrs. Mayor, can you please carry out the name vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Moore.
For.
Councillor Barnett.
For.
Councillor Bennyworth.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Culver.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
For.
Councillor Wollaston.
For.
And Councillor Hooker.
For. Members, thank you very much. That application, therefore, is approved. We can now move on to the second application this evening. This is application 20/020394 full. This is for the land west of the pumping station, Enbourne Road, Wash Water, Enbourne. This is for the construction of stabling and hard standing, change of use of agricultural to a mixed agricultural equestrian use with soft landscaping, and scheme of which I'm sure Miss Kirby will take us through the finer details of. Members, this has come to committee again due to 10 letters or more of objection from the public. Miss Kirby, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen for you. Can everyone see that?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. And it's good size.
Okay, this is for the land west of pumping station. Members, this application seeks planning permission for 2 stables with tack room, feed bedding, storage, hard standing, post and rail fencing, and soft landscaping. This application was brought to committee due to receiving more than 10 objection letters. The application site is located along Enbourne Row, outside of settlement, to the north of the River Enbourne and adjacent to the AONB. There have been 15 objection letters. These raise concerns in relation to the amount of land available in order to keep the equines and additional animal welfare concerns. The committee report and the update sheet set out that animal welfare is not considered a material planning consideration due to it being covered by different legislation. The matter of the viability of the land for the proposed use is, however, a consideration. The agent has submitted a justification statement from Kernow Countryside Consultants, which has addressed the concerns raised in respect of the suitability of the land. Whilst the animal welfare officer has stated his concerns regarding the viability of the land for the proposed use, it is for the applicant to ensure that they meet animal welfare standards. Without this, the site cannot be used for the purposes of keeping equines. There have also been comments in relation to the potential permission for residential use. There are no permitted development rights for equestrian use and change of use to residential. If the applicant wished to seek residential use of the site, they would have to apply for planning permission. Therefore, any residential use of the site would require consideration against national planning policy and the policies of the local development plan. As you can see from the photos, this is what the site currently looks like, and it's currently agricultural land, and obviously will require quite a lot of maintenance to bring it up to grazing land. This is the view from
Ms. Kirby, if we could see the photograph, please.
Can you see the photo? Sorry.
No, we can't. We've still got your first.
Oh, okay. I do apologise.
Right. That's the location.
This is the application site.
Walk us through that at this stage and go on to the photographs.
Yeah, and then on the screen now we have the site location, the site plan indicating the location of the stabling, the 3 paddocks that will be created along with new hedgerows.
And the road is to the north.
Yes, so the road is to the north with the existing access being used to the west of the site.
Thank you.
To the east of the site, I apologise.
Yeah.
There'll also be parking for 2 cars in order to get off the main road. The River Embourne is located to the south of the application site, which you can see at the bottom of the plan there. The proposed stable block.
If we could just go back, we don't have a red line. We're not actually understanding. I think we know where it is, but there's no red line on here for the committee to see what the curtilage is.
Okay, it's quite faint. I do apologise. It's quite faint to see.
I can see it now, but I couldn't in the next one. Thank you. Okay. See that? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
That's it. And the stable block will be of traditional wooden materials. Again, it will be for 2 loose boxes, feed storage and tack room. The next is an aerial view of the site, just for reference. The current photo is from March this year of the application site. This is a photo taken from the existing access across the site. This current photo is from the other side of the main road, looking across to the site. And here are some street view photos of the access road, approaching from the east. And this is a similar photo, again, approaching from the west. And this is the application site from the road, looking towards the site. So members, your officer views that is in consideration of the supporting justifications submitted to the council in relation to the amount of land available for the number of equines to be housed on the site, that the proposal is acceptable and the recommendation is made for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Kirby. We'll just let you clear your screen. Thank you. We're all back together. And come on to Mr. Goddard. We've got a possible equine facility here on this road. Have you got any observations of that for us, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Your highway officers raised no objection to this proposal. The access and the site layout is acceptable. The road from the site to the nearby A343 is a good standard for any sort of traffic associated with the use. And then, of course, from the A343, there's direct access to the A34. So, no, we've no objection to the proposal. We're quite content with it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on now to the written submissions, and we have no submission from the Parish Council, but we do have an objector, and this is from Mr. Richard Coward. So, Mrs. Legg, could you read that out to us, please?
Yes, Chairman. Share that with you. Make it a bit bigger.
A bit bigger, please.
Bigger.
Thank you. That's very good.
Dear Sirs, I wish to object to the planning application 20-20039-FUL. The Parish of Embourne is situated on the southwest flank of the Newbury urban area. It is a largely area, and its residents wish to maintain this characteristic despite the constant pressure to expand the Newbury conurbation across our parish. The stable block for horses sounds like an improvement on the present unmaintained tip-like state of the land in question. However, as a number of residents have pointed out in letters to planners, there are issues which should not be ignored, and the committee should be particularly aware of the potential for planning creep. This land was promoted for a change of land use to residential and mixed use with the potential for up to 10 houses as part of the ongoing HELAA process. Change of land use to equestrian means the site automatically becomes brownfield. Planning rules for brownfield sites are significantly different and make permission to develop easier to obtain. The proposed horse pasture is a part of a larger parcel of land. There is another 1.5 hectares. Currently, the only access to the adjacent parcel of land is via the horse pasture. This other parcel of land was advertised for sale by an estate agent even during this planning application. They state the site does not currently have planning permission. However, it does have plenty of latent potential. Situated to the west of the A34, the site could form part of a larger site for housing development. What larger site is this advert alluding to? The stable block proposed will consist of 2 stables for 2 ponies together with a tack room, feed store and 2 parking spaces, all within 0.37 hectares, 0.91 acres. DEFRA guidelines state that each horse needs 0.48 hectares. We continue to have concerns about animal welfare and the safety of child riders using Embourne Row. The entrance to this site cannot be seen by traffic approaching from the east until virtually upon the entrance. We submit 2 photographs for comparison with the street view photograph in the committee report. These were taken on the 10th of March 2021 when the verges and hedges have been trimmed. One was taken from a similar position as the street view photo, the other from 15 yards further back. They were taken from the middle of the near side lane, not from the offside lane. The road is straight, hence many cars are travelling at 60 miles an hour or often greater speeds. Drivers will not see a horse and rider stepping out until the last second, forcing drivers to brake sharply or even swerve into the oncoming lane. You cannot access a quieter road or byway without travelling 200 metres along this busy road. Yours faithfully, Richard Coward, and there are the photos that he's talking about, Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much. Members, have we any questions of Mr. Coward's presentation, please?
He's not attending.
He didn't attend this evening. Okay, thank you very much. I've got him down as attending, therefore there's no questions.
Yeah.
We now go on to the applicant. We do have a submission from, I think, the agent on the applicant's behalf, Mr. David Wood. Could you read that one out, please, Mrs. Legg?
Yes, Chairman, I'll just share my screen. So this is from David Wood. The above application comes from before the Planning Committee with an officer recommendation for the approval for a small stable block to house the applicant's daughter's 2 small ponies, with a small but important amount of landscaping, together with the change of use of the land from agricultural to a mixed agricultural equestrian use. The proposed stabling is amply illustrated and described in the submitted plans, being of prefabricated timber, construction typical in design and use of materials as of many thousands of similar stabling blocks, particularly in West Berkshire. The siting for the stables has been purposely chosen to reduce the visible impact in this rural area, being set to the rear and southeast corner of the site against the tree screen, to the south bordering the River Embourne, and which is approached by existing hard service access road. Concern has been expressed relating to the amount of grazing land available for the 2 small ponies, the details of which have been considered and explained in the letters from a local agricultural equestrian consultancy. The ponies will not rely on permanent grazing for their maintenance and will be provided with hay and concentrates, both in the stables and outdoor feeding stations when ground conditions are suitable. 2 young girls will be anxiously waiting for the outcome of this application and the provision of stabling for their 2 ponies, which form an important part of their daily lives. Kind regards, David Wood.
Thank you. Mrs. Legg, do we have Mr. Wood with us?
Yes, we do.
We
You can
do.
invite him.
We do have some questions for him. So, Mr. Oliver, if you could invite Mr. Wood in, please.
He's joined the meeting, needs to start his screen.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Wood. If you could show us, turn on your video and unmute yourself, we'd love to see you. We still can't see you, Mr. Wood. I'm just wondering if you can hear me. If you unmute yourself, then we can speak. Thank you. Now, if you'd just like to turn on your video. There we are. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And thank you for joining us. We do have some questions for you. Thank you for your presentation you sent in. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 councillors who'd like to ask you some questions. The first one is Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Wood, in your statement, you say that these ponies will not rely on grazing to be fed. But also in the officer's report, I think it says that every trip to provide fodder will involve a 25-mile each way journey, and it's likely to be required twice a day. That's 100 miles a day of travelling at a time when we're supposed to be dealing with a climate emergency and cutting down unnecessary travel. So how long will this go on for?
How long? Well, until my client finds a suitable property. But he saw the for sale notice for this land sometime last year and decided that it was ideally situated in regard to the area where he's looking for a property to purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wood, for joining us this evening. My main question is, my understanding from the documentation is that there should be more room for the ponies than is actually proposed in this application. So it refers to the fact that DEFRA say each horse needs 0.4 hectares.
Yes.
And also refers to the fact that the British Horse Society says it should be 0.6 hectares. I'm not quite sure why the two organisations differ in their opinion, but my understanding is that this planning application will not provide that, and I'm interested in your comment on that.
But my comment is, if I can say that the management of grassland and the feeding of equines, as we have here, we've got 2 small ponies. One pony probably equals a half, if not 3/4 of a horse, but they're not relying upon the as I say in my statement, they do not rely upon the grassland to provide their maintenance. The maintenance will be provided by the feeding of hay and concentrates.
Thank you. Would you like to, you're happy, Councillor Culver? Would you like
Thank you, Chairman. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Well, Chairman, I'm hoping you're not going to ask me again that I'm raising a question which is not totally relevant. But Mr. Wood, the objector made quite a play in his presentation regarding the positioning of this site in relationship to the straight Emerald Road and the speeds. Are you envisioning that your applicant to have the horses on a regular basis coming out the site onto the highway? Or is it the case that they're going to be permanently housed there and they will only come out in vehicles or trailers?
If they go out, they will, bear in mind, these are 2 young girls at the moment, 6 and 8 years old, respectively. They will be coming out onto the highway, being led with an adult. They will not be going out by themselves initially, and obviously until they grow up.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Bear in mind that the British Horse Society sets out very useful advice in regard to young children and how they should present themselves onto a highway.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Barnett, you'll have an opportunity later to ask Mr Goddard his observations on this with regard to horse as opposed to vehicular considerations. It might be a situation there to discuss that with him. Councillor Cole, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Mr Wood. I wasn't going to ask this question of you, but as you've mentioned it, you've talked about the management of the grassland. And looking at the photograph of the site, it looks a very scrubby site. What is the applicant, should this application succeed, going to manage the grassland better than it currently is? Because I cannot believe that feeding horses hay all the time is going to be particularly successful, because looking at horses near where I live, they eat absolutely everything and they do graze on grass. So what about the management of the grassland and the site?
Yes, Councillor Colt.
Mr Wood, did you hear that question?
Yes, I got the gist of it. Part of the works that are necessary is that the whole site is going to be cultivated and reseeded. I have walked it. I must admit, it was last summer when I last walked it, and decided and advised my client before he bought the land that he would be involved in having to cultivate it and seed it down to fresh pasture. It's in a poor condition, very poor condition.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, Mr Wood. Thank you for joining us this evening. Following on from Councillor Cole's point about land management, bear in mind we're talking about a relatively small site here in less than an acre in old money, and that presumably takes into consideration both the access and stabling and hard standing area also, which reduces the land even further. What will the paddock land? We've got 3 paddocks identified on the plans. What will they be used for? Bearing in mind if they're being used for riding, it would reduce further still the potential turnout opportunities there for the ponies.
Well, the whole idea of spreading it up into paddocks is that one can manage their grassland and also manage the pests, particularly pests of the gut. If you can break the worm cycle, for example, if you can keep a horse off of land for more than 20 days, then certainly we can not eliminate, but we certainly control worm pests, for example, and it also gives chance for the grass to recover. A 3-week cycle with 3 paddocks would give the grass a chance to recover. But bear in mind that they are not, as is advised in the VHS and DEFRA, they're not taking their maintenance of having to live off the land. They are being fed supplementary hay and concentrates, and they will be browsing possibly more than grazing.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As a supplementary, if I may, moving back really to the more the sustainability of this, we're looking at paddocks which will be, to your point about worms, they'll have to be regularly, if you forgive my technical expertise here, poo picked on a daily, regular. I'm just concerned with the fact that the owner and Councillor Vickers picked up on this, being some way away. Will that be something that's done as regularly as it ought to be?
As part of the management, as my clients are familiar with it in any case, part of the management is that it's necessary to do daily poo picking. It's part of the routine, just as it's part of the routine to muck out stables. It's also necessary to go poo picking. And if one keeps on top of it and does it regularly, then one doesn't have a problem. There would be with rank grasses.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you, members, for your question. I have one more from Councillor Cole, I see.
Yes, Chairman, this is probably quite an irrelevant question, but where are the ponies kept at the moment, Mr. Wood?
They're in livery, and they livery just outside Abingdon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wood. I'll ask Mr. Oliver to escort you back into our waiting room, and you can listen to our members' presentation and the debate later. And thank you very much for your contribution and the way you answered the questions this evening on behalf of your client. Mr. Wood has gone. So we now come on to our ward members, and I understand we've got Councillor Bennyworth and Councillor Cole this evening who'd like to address us. Members, you're always welcome, and we look forward always to your presentations. And you well know the service here, which is required, and that's a 5-minute presentation. And presumably, you're both on the same tack. You're not opposite each other on this, and therefore you'll have 5 minutes total. Maybe Councillor Bennyworth, you good. Councillor Coles have joined us. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Maybe you could advise us the format before you start. Who's going to speak and first?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll kick off and then hand over to Councillor James Cole.
Okay, I will give you notification at 1 minute to go, and at 10 seconds I'll say "and in conclusion," and I'm sure Councillor Cole will phase out after 10 seconds. So when you're ready, Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillors, you've heard how parish councillors and residents are concerned that these ponies might be elevated to the status of Trojan horses and ease the applicant's way to a future residential use for this land. But let's put that to one side and look at West Berk's policy. EMV 21 requires that there is sufficient land provided. We've heard that the overall size of the plot is 0.37 of a hectare, just under an acre in old money. Bearing in mind, as Councillor Culver mentioned, that 0.6 hectares per horse is the recommended amount of space. That doesn't take into consideration, as I just mentioned, the area that's taken up by the stable block and the access road, which is, broadly speaking, a quarter of the total area, reducing the overall area per pony further still. CS12 refers to enjoying the countryside in a sustainable way, but I do wonder how sustainable. Again, Councillor Vickers mentioned this, a 100-mile daily commute to look after the ponies twice a day, as is claimed, genuinely is, as well as ferrying in fresh water on a daily basis. In addition, policy CS13 states the aim to reduce the need for travel. This could be said to have the opposite effect. In our report, 6.10 identifies the road adjoining the site as one where the national speed limit applies, and there's concern with regard to the hazard to riders. As we're talking about young riders, this is even more of an issue. This then draws me back to the question of overall space and the design, and access statement claim that there is an adequate area of land which, with careful management, will provide grazing and exercise area for 2 ponies. I would like to humbly suggest that careful management in this instance could be something of an understatement. I look forward to the debate and considering the views of this committee, and will hand over to Councillor James Cole.
So, Chairman, Councillor Bennyworth has set out the basic facts for the committee. He's alluded to what local residents believe this application in reality is about getting planning for houses. Mr. Coward's letter sets this out very well. The owners of this land reportedly have been advertising the larger bit. The case officer states that animal welfare is not a material planning consideration. Councillor Bennyworth pointed out, actually the land for these horses is dramatically under the minimum that our own policy, ENV 29, states is the minimum required for horses. I think that section D of ENV 29 in conjunction with 2.56.3 below makes our planning policy rather clear. In reality, of course, if you did put 2 ponies into that small wet piece of land, it'd be poached in no time as the soil structure breaks down when animals have been kept on it for too long. The effect of constant wet mud on horse hooves can be quite damaging, leads to conditions like thrush. Councillor Bennyworth has told us that our own policy CS12 expects sustainable enjoyment of the countryside. Here we have unsustainable commuting. It's also completely against policy CS13, but planning officers think this is not relevant. Site itself, 60-mile-an-hour road. You take a car at 60 miles an hour past a horse and rider coming out of the field through that existing access. What do you think will happen? Typically, the horse or pony rears, throws the rider gets hurt. That can happen to experienced older riders. While this site's for young riders, they may be led by adults, but it's still a risk, and it's a greater risk long term.
1 minute. Oh, 1 minute.
So, is that road that bad? Should members worry? Most horses are kept in fields or paddocks down country lanes, where the theoretical speed limit may indeed be 60 miles an hour, but the practical speed is much lower. Traffic volumes not high, whereas that road is not in that category. Volumes are high. Drivers leave Enbourne and speed up to the limit. The stretch is long enough. Coming the other way, the same happens. Coming into Enbourne from that side, there's a VAS, and you see it click on again and again. It's a fast road. A piece of land is not appropriate for equines. I think this is property speculation. What's really needed here in this time of climate change is to plant trees there. This application is not even in a grey area open to interpretation. It's simply not within our planning policies. It should be refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Members, that is the presentation of the councillors. And does anyone have any questions? We do. Councillor Cole.
Yeah, it's a question for Councillor Bennyworth, really. The acreage of this land is below the standard that is recommended. And currently it's for to hold 2 ponies. And I'm just curious, using your equestrian expertise, Councillor Bennyworth, how long will 2 small girls be able to ride ponies before they need to graduate up to a larger pony or a horse, and then the size of the acreage would be unsustainable for larger animals? What's the lifetime of this particular site in relation to changing up from ponies? Because I know kids rapidly grow out of ponies. I see them going up and down my lane all the time. They start on a Shetland pony and then they grow up. And I'm concerned that this site won't be sustainable for 2 larger horses. Could you give me your opinion, please?
It's a good point, Councillor Cole. I think Mr. Wood made mention of the fact that the applicant's daughters were 6 and 8, unless I'm mistaken. I suppose one could argue the ponies have been described as 11 and 12 hands respectively in height. One might reasonably expect a couple of years of enjoyment, 2 or 3 years probably at tops, with their current ponies. It wouldn't be unreasonable, but you're right. I mean, I've a daughter that has a couple of hay burners, as we like to call them, and she has outgrown the precedents at a fairly quick rate of knots. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Culver.
I think Councillor Barnett was before me.
I'll take you first.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Councillor Bennyworth, again, with your expertise in this area, do you have any concerns about the remoteness of this location in terms of the horses' safety? if anyone was to try to steal them, for example? I'm aware that a lot of people do have horses away from their home, but often not very far. And bearing in mind that they're 25 miles away, would you have concerns about the safety if something was to happen to the horses?
Thank you, Councillor Culver. I suppose ideally the animals will be looked at on a frequent basis, a constant basis almost. But I think the applicant has stated that if they're unable to come and visit the horses on a regular basis, once or twice a day, which isn't unreasonable, I have to say, then they'd make provision for someone else to do the same. And one can only assume that they'd be making secure fencing and gateways to ensure the safety of the ponies.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Through you, Chairman, Councillor James Cole. You made reference to the issue of the speed along the M1 road, similar to my question to the applicant. Obviously, it was just formed part of your concerns. If the road had been restricted to 40 along that stretch, and obviously it's a very open, wide, very clear area to drive, as you say, at speed. If it had been a reduced speed along that stretch, would you have felt of a similar nature, or is it just part of your concerns?
40 mile an hour specifically. I would be concerned at 40 mile an hour, yes. If there's lots of horses around where I live, and you can manage, it's not just speed, it's volume of traffic, the likelihood of something happening on that particular road. Yes, it is much worse because it's 60 mile an hour, but even at 40 mile an hour, I'd be worried. The pitch to members is that these children are going to be led out, and I'm sure that would be the case for a year or two, but after a while they get to want to do it themselves. And that road would not be funny. It's not appropriate for ponies or horses. Different bits of land have different usage. That there is not appropriate for equines. Simple.
One question, Councillor Cole. In your presentation, you mentioned that this is wetland and not suitable. Where did that come from? Is that your own overview, or is it a land study being done that it's wet?
It's my view.
Your view.
It's on alongside the river.
Okay, so your view is wet. Yeah, okay.
It's always been a bit wet there. It's the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. I'll ask Mr. Oliver to escort you back into the waiting room. We'll name Councillor Bennyworth, and we'll now come on to questions of clarification from Ms. Kirby members. Councillor Moore, you've got your hand up first. I know your other hand isn't working, so I'll take you first on this one.
I must do this again, Chairman. And
you're there now, you're in.
I get precedence. Yes, it really echoes the comment and worry about the number of and size of the horses. I note, Ms. Kirby, that you've put a condition already in about 2. But it seems to me, and I know very, very little about horses, but the difference between 2 ponies and 2 cart horses is quite significant. And the sense of the discussion that they may indeed grow as the users grow. Is it possible to tighten that condition to ponies?
Thank you very much, Councillor. I don't think it would be classed as reasonable for us to limit the height on the equines allowed on the site. But in terms of the height of the horse or pony, if the land becomes unviable to maintain them horses, that is down to the applicant. If they can't maintain larger horses on the site, then there may be under separate legislation such as the Animal Welfare Act. So it was for them. It's for them to decide whether it's viable and whether they can keep larger equines on the site.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Just focusing on the issue of the 100 miles a day travel in order to manage the land and the animals. Is it possible, were we minded to support the officer's recommendation, is it possible to condition that this not be implemented in full, i.e. that the horses not be brought on site until the authority is satisfied that the management of the land and the animals can be carried out from the local area?
Chairman, Councillor Vickers, I think I'd like to answer this question, if that's all right.
Thank you.
The applicant's address is not a material planning consideration. The planning permission, unless made personal to a particular applicant for good planning reasons, and there aren't, in my view, any in this case, goes with the land, and the reason for that is quite simply that an applicant may not wish to obtain planning permission for themselves, or they may wish to purchase a piece of land, obtain planning permission, and sell it off to somebody else who can make a useful, viable use of it. So I would strongly advise members against attempting to impose a condition in respect of limiting the applicant's address, which is very thoroughly outside of the remit of planning.
Can I just follow up? I mean, I deliberately didn't mention an address, but it's the fact that the report admitted that there was this case, and I was wondering if it was possible to condition this type of application to the authority being satisfied that the land can be managed in a sustainable way, and it's not sustainable for anybody wherever they live to rely on long journeys every day in order to do that. It just doesn't seem reasonable, frankly.
Councillor Vickers, I appreciate what you're saying, and sustainability is obviously of important concern in considering planning applications, but there's no way to phrase a condition, in my view, to be precise about specifying criteria, particularly where you're relying on activities that take place outside of the application site and outside of the applicant's land in the applicant's own ownership. So
okay.
I'm afraid not.
Thank you. Who else have we got? Councillor Culver, are you back in?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, question for Ms Kirby or for Mr Till. Under 6.25 on page 52, it says animal welfare laws are not the consideration of the planning process, and yet 6.8 talks about the Environment Policy 29, and under D it says that there should be sufficient land being provided. So those two statements don't seem to be consistent, that we don't consider animal welfare, but one of our policies says that sufficient land should be provided, and I would have thought that that is a welfare consideration. Thank you.
Cheyenne, I think if you answer that, and I'll supplement anything I think necessary.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yes, so that policy is obviously one of our older saved policies. It does reference land, the amount of land is available, but that's advised through the guidance from the British Horse Society, the BHS, and the DEFRA action plan. These are just advisory policies, and they're to offer guidance to planning and ownership of equines and other donkeys, etc. But planning itself cannot consider the actual animal welfare, and it's up to the applicant to find whether it's viable for them to maintain animals on that land. That's under their jurisdiction. I don't know whether Simon has any further comments to add on that.
Yeah, I would like to add that the planning practice guidance is very clear that local authorities, local planning authorities should defer to other legislation where that legislation better addresses the matter concerned. So in the instance of animal welfare, where you have a clear set of animal welfare legislation which constrains activities on a site such as this beyond what a planning permission would do, and more specifically than what a planning permission would do, we should limit our considerations to whether the use of the land proposed is in essence a sensible use in consideration of the materiality of the circumstances of the site. Now, our policy, you're absolutely correct, does seek to specify a land amount, but it is based in guidance, and it is not a hard and fast rule. So in this particular case, officers have sought a considerable amount of additional information. You've already heard from the applicant's representative in terms of the amount of consideration of the viable use of this land. So officers are satisfied that on balance, the burden of evidence is that a viable use of this land could be made for the purposes that are proposed. Thank you.
Chairman, a supplementary, if I may. Would it be possible to make a condition regarding security? So fencing, for example, or an alarm?
Councillor Culver, I think that would really fall outside of the remit of the considerations under this application as far as planning is concerned. The applicant might have a considerable interest in protecting his costly investment in terms of equines kept on the land.
Thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
When I first looked at this application, I was quite supportive, but the more I've heard, I'm not convinced. It seems to me that this is a too small a bit of land to support 2 ponies in a situation where the likelihood is they'll become horses very soon.
This is a question. Is this a question? Councillor Wollaston, not a debate.
No, it's not. It will be a question.
What is the question, please?
Well, if you'll bear with me, Chairman.
Yeah.
And my conclusion is that we should not accept this. So I am recommending that we reject the officer's recommendation.
This is not debate, Councillor Wollaston. This is a question of the officer.
I'm sorry, in that case, I'll hold back.
Thank you. That's why I intervened there. Yeah, you're in the wrong position, the wrong place of the debate.
My apologies, Chairman.
Okay. Any more questions? We do have Councillor Cole back. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cole.
You mean Councillor Cole, not Culver, Chairman?
Cole, I did say Cole, sorry.
I thought you said Culver. It's just really a question. You've mentioned the word at the very last minute, Mr. Till, about this is a balanced application. Now, most applications that come before us are balanced. And you've also said that you've mentioned policies, sort of guidance and advice. So I'm just struggling to see how balanced this is and how much weight we should give to the guidance and advice. Can you tell me in the various policies or from the other sources?
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I think it's a very difficult balance to strike where we have policies which refer to matters that are typically outside of the field of planning control, and where we have national planning practice guidance that requires us to defer to other legislation. And so officers have to apply very carefully the requirements of policy in that case. And in the first case, in this application, officers looked at the requirements of our policy and the recommendations within it, and looked at the amount of land proposed. And reverted to the applicant with a number of requests for a considerable amount of additional information and justification provided at a significant depth, and sought technical advice from the animal welfare officer in order to establish the extent to which the information that we provided was consistent with his considerations as far as the animal welfare legislation was concerned. But what we have sought to do in making our recommendation is not to overstep into the remit of that animal welfare legislation. So when I say it's a balanced consideration, it is a consideration in the knowledge that our policy has specified recommended standards, but that we have sought a level of additional information to satisfy ourselves that the intentions of that policy to secure an appropriate amount, quality and nature of land for the use proposed is provided, that those are delivered on. And we've sought to avoid stepping over into the remit of making recommendations based on pure animal welfare concerns that are then delivered on by the animal welfare legislation itself. I hope that clarifies matters. I know it's a long explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Thank you, Mr. Till, for that. Finally, Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Till, just following on really from that, we have policy and we also defer to the experts for want of a better word. What we're looking at here, if you sort of take the cold hard numbers and slice it up a bit, with the overall plot size, which isn't generous, let's be honest, and then factor in the space which is taken up by the stabling, by the access road, by the skip, by the parking. I said in my piece it was something that was the back of a fag packet guess at around a quarter. If we say about a fifth of the overall size of the plot, and then divide the remainder by 2 for the 2 ponies, we're left with something like 0.14 of a hectare against the recommended 0.6 hectare per animal. Is that something that we're still happy with, that you'd be happy with as officers to go along with?
Thank you, Councillor Bennyworth. In summary, I've said that officers have taken this to what we consider to be a satisfactory high level of detailed justification to support the proposals. Overdevelopment on the site is, of course, a material planning consideration. Now, members may take a different view in respect of concerns with overdevelopment, even if the overdevelopment that we're referring to is in terms of whether the site can be turned viably to the use that is proposed on it. But I should point out that detailed consideration was given to medical considerations for the animals, the conditions that might affect them being kept on this particular piece of land. And at every point where officers queried these matters, some detailed responses were provided by the agent. So in that situation, officers are satisfied, as I say, on balance, that the justification is provided to support that this land can be viably used, and therefore we don't have concerns ourselves regarding overdevelopment of the site. Members may choose to take a different view on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, opportunity now to ask questions of Mr. Goddard. Councillor Barnett might be like to come in here.
Well, Chairman, perhaps I have a third bite at the cherry. Yeah, Mr. Goddard, you've heard my views, and you've obviously heard the views of the ward member in relationship to this stretch of the road and speeds. What is your issue in relationship to the concerns that might well be a major issue of equines getting out onto the highway with obviously vehicles that could well be travelling up to the maximum, if not more, and it might be a clear visibility along that stretch, but nevertheless to suddenly approach a horse at speed is not an ideal situation. What is your views on that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The demarcation between 30 miles per hour and the national speed limit of 60 miles per hour is a short distance to the east of the site. However, it will not come as any surprise for me to think that vehicles are travelling much faster than that. However, in return, the sight lines along there, being a very straight road, are well above standard. They are very good. And that does make it rather difficult for us to object to the planning application, because equines may be on that road. We are all obliged, and of course me included, I always do, that when you see riders on the road, you slow down as per the highway code. And with very good sight lines, I consider that drivers will have plenty of time to be able to react, slow down, and pass the horses and the riders at the appropriate speed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Would it be possible to put a condition here about signing the entrance and the presence of horses, and is that something that you might expect the applicant to pay for?
Chairman, that would have to be a matter for colleagues in traffic management about the provision of signage. I can't really tell you what the rules are on provision of signage, warning of equines on the road. All I'd suggest is that if it becomes an issue, that the applicants would approach the highway authority, my colleagues in traffic management, to ask if they wish to have a sign installed on the public highway. I'm sorry that's not particularly helpful at the moment, but that's probably the best I can offer at this time.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members, for those questions of the officers. Members, we now move on to the debate, but before we do, as chairman, it's my role to ensure that, as a responsible planning committee, we address the application before us. And I must admit, I was very interested in the way the debate went, and I appreciate we're dealing with animals, as we have previously on planning applications, and animals and their welfare is a very emotive subject. But if we look at the application before us, it is for the construction of stabling and hard standing, change of use of agricultural land to mixed agricultural equestrian use, and soft landscaping scheme. That is the application before us, and the issue submitted in the red line on the plan submitted. And that's why I made the case to Mrs. Kirby that we were quite clear what the red line was and what the issues were within that application. But let me just try and focus the discussion before we start. The thought of the possible knock-on effect of development is interesting but not relevant. The residential issue where this chap lives is not relevant. The visiting schedule of the applicant, to be honest, is not relevant. The welfare of the animal, although emotive, is not an issue for planning. It'd be something that will be taken on by another agency, whether the horse doesn't get enough or we put 2 horses in, that will be looked at RSPCA or another agent. It's not a planning issue. The horticultural issue of how they're going to graze this or sow seeds and how they're going to fertilise it to ensure, not a planning issue. Security, not a planning issue. We don't put security on every field that's got a pig or a sheep in it or a cow in it. So these are issues that are a responsibility of the owner, and if he doesn't abide by them, then somebody else will come down on him. So if I could just ask you to just concentrate on the debate on the planning issues for a start, I would appreciate it. And I think then the applicant and others will think that this application has had a good discussion. So if I could ask somebody to open the discussion, please. Thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
Thinking about what you just said, Chairman, my view, this is overdevelopment. Trying to put 2 stables on a relatively small amount of land is just not acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
I agree, and I think the one other issue that I think we can use, which is a planning matter, were we minded to refuse, and I'm not proposing at this stage to recommend either way, is the highway safety. I mean, we've heard from the applicant's agent themselves saying they envisage ponies with small children on being led out onto a road which could be at 60 miles an hour. Now, I know it's probably the owner's responsibility to look after their children and their animals, but it is our responsibility to ensure that permission we grant does not inevitably introduce undue risks to all users of the public highway. And I think by his own admission, the applicant's agent has told us that there is an undue risk, which I was thinking of until we had the start of this meeting.
Thank you. You've had a response from a highways engineer, a professional highways engineer on those issues. That's your opinion, and that will be taken into account by others. Councillor Colbert.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I respect the comments you just made, asking us to respond based on the things in front of us. So what I would say in response to that is, would we allow a tiny house to be built because it met certain regulations and policies, knowing that it would not be big enough for people to live in, and the organisations that are concerned with the welfare of people, you know, who say that you should have a certain amount of space, would we say, well, that doesn't matter? The small house met the planning conditions, so we're going to let it go ahead. I don't think the argument follows.
Thank you, Councillor Colbert. As we say, each application is looked at on its own merits, and we're looking at this one within the red line. Councillor Pennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. With the greatest respect, I just like to really pick up on your point about relevant planning issues here, and I think sustainability you mentioned and animal welfare. We have policies for these, and surely because of that, are they not genuinely they're part of our policy? Are there not planning considerations?
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate and understand what you have said in your attempt to guide us to a decision. However, I think in some respects I have to disagree with you, which is very rare, and disagree with officers' application of policy. We've learned from Mr. Till that this is a balanced decision, and from Ms. Kirby that it's up to the applicant to decide if the land is suitable to be used as described. However, I'm pleased that in this instance, officers have thought it of sufficient concern to them to seek the views of our animal welfare officer, and I'm pleased that he has been consulted. When I looked at this application originally before this evening, I thought it was fairly straightforward, but the more I think about it, the more I look at it, I am inclined to not support the application, because even though the points that you have made, quite rightly, Chairman, it doesn't, I don't think, in my opinion, take away the fact that we ought to have be concerned and have a moral duty with regard to the welfare of animals on this site, knowing that the site is a substandard space-wise before we even start. And as Councillor Bennyworth has said to my question, children grow out of ponies quite quickly, and we're going to end up with a site that is even smaller to accommodate these ponies. And despite the applicants saying yes, they'll be fed and they'll be given supplements and whatever, you've still got to think about the space available for these animals to exercise, and I don't think it's adequate, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. What I will say is, as chairman, it's not my role to influence, but it is my responsibility to make sure that we do direct our thoughts in the right direction. It's my role to point out what this application is about and just remind members, the majority of the discussion was not, and the questions were not, in my opinion, and I think maybe of the officers of a planning nature. If this goes elsewhere and the minutes and what have you are addressed here, one in another place might say, well, the planning issues have not been addressed. It's been pointed out by the chairman that this is the focus of this application, and I've done that, and you've taken that consideration, and the debate is still going on, and I've done, as I say, my role is not to influence the decision, just to point out where we ought to concentrate our thoughts and what's in the red line. Thank you, and we have Councillor Barrett.
Chairman, I do take note of what you said, but I do actually go back to my initial statement at the beginning of the meeting. I said I would look at each application on its own merits tonight. I would listen to the comments made, and I would weigh up my views based on the comments made. And, you know, even taking in consideration what you said, Chairman, I have to say, I'm inclined to feel that I'm not too happy, and therefore I'm very much in view the same as Councillor Cole and Councillor Wollaston. My views might have been different beginning the application, but I'm going to assure you I feel slightly different now. So I definitely won't be supporting this particular proposal.
Thank you, members. Councillor Vickers. Good, Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I think I've heard enough from colleagues. I agree it's balanced, and I'd like it to be on the record that certainly I myself accept what the officers say about in answer to the various questions we've had, you know, specifically in my case about the distance to travel and it being irrelevant where the applicant lives. I do, however, feel that having learnt this new definition of the word poached, we are literally going to end up with a brown field here, although in planning terms it won't be a brownfield site. I walk the footpaths in this part of the Enbourne Valley frequently, and I come across many what I would call overdeveloped horse paddocks, where the soil structure has been completely destroyed by not providing enough grazing land for equine animals. And if it's possible to call this overdevelopment, I think that's what it is. And let alone for ponies, this is not land. This is not an application where either the people or the animals are, you know, size defined or address defined. Two grown horses, I would believe, on this. If we consent to this application, then two grown horses will definitely turn this into a brown field. So I would be happy to propose that we refuse this application on two grounds. That is on the grounds of overdevelopment of this piece of land, and secondly on the grounds of highway safety, citing policy CS13, with due respect to our transport officer, highways officer.
Thank you. I do have a second. Councillor Wollaston, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Vickers.
Good. Okay. So, before we take this to the vote, I'm going to just speak to Mrs. Kirby and Mrs. Mayor. You did pick up those two conditions. This is for
reasons for refusal, anyway. Yes.
Yeah. The reasons for refusal are overdevelopment and highways.
Highway safety. Yes.
Okay, we're quite happy with that. Okay, then I will put this to the vote. This is a recommendation for Head of Planning and Countryside to be authorised to refuse this planning application number 20/02039 full. This is for land off the pumping station at Embourne Row. That was proposed by Councillor Vickers and seconded by Councillor Wollaston. So, Mrs. Mayor, if you'd be kind enough to carry the name vote, please.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
For.
Councillor Barnett.
For.
Councillor Bennyworth.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Culver.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
For.
Councillor Wollaston.
For.
And finally, Chair, Councillor Hooker.
I'll abstain.
Okay, thank you. Carried 6-1.
Very good. Members, thank you very much. Interesting debate, and we will now take a comfort break for 10 minutes. So if I could ask us to reconvene at 25 to 9. Everybody happy? I'll leave this in the hands of Mr. Oliver. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Councillor Berryworth, Councillor Wollaston, are you with us? Ready to go. Thank you, Councillor Berryworth. Councillor Wollaston.
Chairman, yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Mayor. Thank you. And Mrs. Legg. Thank you. Mrs. Legg, will you check us in, please? Are we all assembled? I think we are. Thank you. Then we'll move on now to our third application, which is application 18/03340, COMIND, Newbury Racecourse at Greenham. This is the permanent use of a hostel. This has come to committee due to 10 letters of objection from the public. I'd like to invite Mr. Till on this occasion, if he would, to present the application to the committee. Mr. Till.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry about that. Can you see my screen?
I can, and we've got the site plan up.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this application was originally brought before the committee in 2019 with an officer's recommendation of approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. It's for the permanent change of use of the lodge at Newbury Racecourse to a 36-bedroom hotel following the expiration of the previous 3-year planning permission, and that was in 2018. 2019 even. The application originally went to committee because of receiving more than 10 letters of objection. It's been brought back before the committee by the Development Control Manager in order to consider alterations to the heads of terms of the Section 106 legal agreement, which have been requested by the racecourse. Members, as the committee has already reached a resolution to approve this application previously, and the previous report was included with the agenda, I'll focus on the proposed alterations to the terms of the Section 106 agreement. You'll be aware from the 2 reports that planning permission exists for the development of a separate 123-bedroom hotel on the racecourse site, and that other works which form part of that planning permission have been implemented across the racecourse site. So there is no doubt that planning permission for the 123-bedroom hotel has, by virtue of other works within the same planning permission, been implemented. So the racecourse have extant permission to develop the 123-bedroom hotel. In presenting this application to members, officers advised that in order to ensure that the hotel rooms on the site did not reach a level beyond the existing consent for 123 hotel bedrooms, a Section 106 agreement would be entered into to secure this part of the extant planning permission was not developed. However, in subsequent discussions with officers while negotiating the Section 106, the racecourse have raised concerns with this approach, pointing out that this would both prevent them from at any point being able to change their plans and build the approved hotel while reverting the lodge to its approved use, or from the approved hotel being considered material to consideration of any future application to develop further hotel accommodation on the site. Therefore, the racecourse have proposed that instead of agreeing not to build the approved 123-bedroom hotel, they should agree not to have more than 123 hotel bedrooms on the site of the racecourse. In reality, while this would mean that the existing consent would be capable of being built out and it would stand as a material consideration in any future planning application for additional hotel bedrooms on the racecourse site, it would not be possible to build alternative hotel accommodation without planning permission having been applied for or relinquishing the hotel use of the lodge. and therefore the material situation would remain the same as it is now. Should the racecourse wish to build out the approved 123-bedroom hotel in the future, then it would be necessary for them to cease use of the lodge and any other hotel accommodation to cease as such. It's important to note that the concern with the amount of the hotel accommodation on the site arises from the requirements in the NPPF to provide a sequential test to demonstrate that town centre uses like hotel accommodation can't be accommodated within a town centre and will not have a detrimental impact on a town centre. So without such a test having been provided with this application, it's not appropriate to allow planning permission for hotel accommodation beyond the number of hotel bedrooms with extant planning permission on the site, i.e. 123 hotel bedrooms. Turning to the objections to the application, members will recall that the main objection is in terms of the amenity of the neighbouring residential occupants on Horsewalk and Chatham Hatch to the south of the lodge. The Environmental Health Officer has confirmed that that Environmental Health have only ever received 2 complaints regarding the hotel. One of those was received in 2015, regarding lights from the lodge, which was subsequently changed. And the other in 2016 was regarding a group of people talking loudly outside of the lodge, which Environmental Health subsequently gave the racecourse advice on. The lodge, in terms of highway safety and parking provision, there are no highways objections and no additional concerns in respect of visual impact. Members, in light of the previous resolution to approve and the officer's view that the alteration to the section 106 would not result in any significant material change to the existing situation, with planning permission for a 123-bedroom hotel versus an allowed limit of up to 123 hotel bedrooms on site secured within the legal agreement and subject to planning permission being sought. Your officer's recommendation, as given in part 8 of the report, is for approval subject to the conditions set out in the agenda and the terms of the section 106. Or if the section 106 is not agreed, subject to those terms, the application is refused. Turning to the update sheet, finally, you'll note that further details in respect of the environmental health service requests, complaints received have been provided, confirming that nothing's been received since 2016, and I can confirm that that detail was checked today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Till. Mr. Gollard, any observations with regard to this being used possibly as a hotel as opposed to a hostel? Any highways differences, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The building has been used for most of the year as a hotel for the last 4 or 5 years since the original planning application in 2016. Your highway officers are not aware of any issues surrounding that, so have no objection for this being continued. We are also assured that with the continued limitation of 123 hotel bedrooms within the site, the original 2009 consent included a 123-bed hotel within Newbury Racecourse, and yeah, as I said, subject to 123 bedrooms still being provided somewhere within the Newbury Racecourse and being retained at that level, we've no objection to the proposal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Goddard. We now come to the written submissions from the public, and I'll call Mrs. Legg to help me here, but we've got nothing from the councils, but we do have a submission from Mr. Raymond Beard. Mrs. Legg, could you read out Mr. Beard's submission, please?
Yes, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. This proposal to vary the originally accepted terms of the required Section 106 agreement is an unfair process. The application, conditionally approved on 3rd of July 2019, was a standalone with its site confined to the lodge and car park too. There has been no planning application to vary the outline permission 14/03109/outmatch for the substantial redevelopment of the racecourse site, which reaffirmed permission 09/00971/outmatch. The details for that hotel also having been approved and put under permission 11/01505/resmatch. These permissions unequivocally required the hotel to be built between the grandstand and the central area apartments. It is inappropriate that Section 106 agreement attached to this application should be used to alter the terms and effect of those earlier permissions and to state that up to 123 hotel bedrooms can be provided anywhere on the racecourse site, which site extends beyond the racecourse to all the residential development areas. There has been no open and fair process about there being more than one hotel within the racecourse site. The submitted application was coupled with a written assurance that reliance on the earlier permissions for a hotel would be relinquished. The meeting on the 3rd of July 2019, the CEO stated that the originally planned hotel would have required an investment of 20 million, and instead they had chosen to invest in the racing infrastructure of the site rather than gamble on a hotel enterprise. He said the proposal for the lodge was an effective way of providing a hotel. The consequence of the proposed revised Section 106 agreement will be to avoid the need for a full sequential assessment for another hotel on the racecourse site. It is not reasonable for the applicant, started in 2019 with formalising within 3 months the terms of the required Section 106 agreement, not to build the 123-bedroom hotel, to abandon that task and indeed seek substantially different terms 20 months later. It is not for officers to assert that the condition imposed with the outline permission that the redevelopment be in accord with the approved site-wide phasing scheme, that is, before the residential central and eastern areas was for limited purposes. Further, to grant under delegated permission 21/00348/non-mat on 5th of March 2021, ahead of this contested application, unfairly removes any consideration of the importance of that unamended condition and the failure to comply with it. The direct consequence of permission 21/00348/non-mat is that permission to build up to 123 bedrooms for hotel use within the whole development site is retained with absolutely no phasing requirements or time constraints. Proposed condition 4 is akin to a licensing matter, more appropriate to the terms of the racecourse's entertainment license. Also, to permit the lodge's closure for private functions indicates a use inconsistent with a full-time hotel. Newbury Racecourse's Heart Space already fully services private and other functions. There is no need for the lodge to be another such venue. That's the end of the submission, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Glegg. We're all back together. Good. Members, any questions of Mr. Beard's submission this evening? I see no hands up. Thank you. We'll then move on. Mr. Beard, thank you for your submission. We have no questions for you, and therefore I won't invite you into the meeting. We now move on we have no submissions from any supporters, and we don't, in fact, have anything from the applicant. So we'll move straight on now to the ward members, and this evening, Councillor Barnett is going to address us. So I'll just get myself ready, Councillor Barnett, and we'll see. There we are. I'm ready. As you know, you'll have 5 minutes. I'll give you 1 minute's notice, and 10 seconds to go, I'll just say, and in conclusion. When you're ready, Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Chairman. One hopes one won't be anywhere near 5 minutes. I find both this application and the one following very difficult to voice my total opinion due to the delay after delay in determining the proposals, which is rather unfortunate because of various reasons. And obviously the changing circumstances over the whole last decade when the first application was submitted. Having said that, I'm going to obviously now read out what I had originally planned to say some time ago, because there's been 2 deferments of these applications. Residents of Greenham Parish, Newbury Town, not forgetting residents of the new Newbury Greenham Ward, have always kept a close eye and interest on this main sporting activity the racecourse, especially over recent years, when various planning applications have progressed and eventually passed, alterations, developments built. And of course, most of them have been listed under para 2.1 on the papers. The residents of such developments have now become part and parcel of the local community, many of which feel they have been taken to endure considerable changes at such a time after taking residency, and their expectations dashed when original planning conditions were changed. A new hotel in the eastern area of the site complex was agreed and expected to be built, not only for the residents, but of course, Greenham Parish and Newbury Town, with a retainment of open space in and around the new Stable Lads Lodge, the replacement for the original hostel, of course. The conditions of the earlier agreement, these proposals were outlined in the original application, intend to formalise a temporary agreement 2 years ago, which of course was clearly a 365-day operation, whereas the Stable Lads requirement would have only been race periods up to 25 days per year. This is likely to have considerable quality of life, and especially for residents. And we've already heard tonight, the residents very close by in Horsewalk, especially late in the evening, and particularly during summer months when, of course, private functions are going to be the mainstay of anything which is associated with this hotel. Are these residents likely to take up the offer, which of course is part of the agreement, that they will be able to actually take the facilities on board if they so wish? And I suspect probably they won't anyway. Furthermore, of course, the hotel, or as we knew it as the hostel, was a replacement for the original Stable Lads accommodation. And I call it accommodation because, of course, the accommodation was very much based on what stable persons, I better be careful, because of course it could well be female as well as male, stable or jockeys as so wish. And of course their accommodation is possibly not the same accommodation as what is expected by a lot of overnight professionals looking for accommodation. And unfortunately, we haven't got the applicant tonight, because one of the things I was going to ask was regarding the space in the rooms. The space in the rooms, my understanding is, it's very, very limited, I might add. And for that reason, we obviously are, a little concerned that there's been several changes made which we were never expecting when it was first put forward. And furthermore, of course, the original site, is it going to be defunct totally? Are we ever likely to see a possible community facility, which of course is very desperately needed by the local community, as well as obviously all the residents in that particular area? So at that particular point, I'll hold my breath and await any comments from members.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Members, any questions of Councillor Barnett? No, Councillor, I think you've got away with that. So you've been off the hook. So thank you very much, members. Members, do we have any questions of clarification of Mr. Till's presentation, please? Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole, please.
Thank you. This is a technical issue, isn't it, really, Mr. Till? It's a change to the Section 106 agreement. Is that right? That's what we're looking at, isn't it? The fact that it's going to be a maximum number of rooms over the whole of the site, 123 rooms, rather than the separate hotel. Is that right?
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Yes, in essence, we've been provided with one previous approach that the hotel approved wouldn't be developed, and we're asked to consider whether limiting the number of hotel bedrooms would have effectively the same impact in terms of not providing additional hotel accommodation beyond what has already gained approval. So yes, it is a technical consideration of how the Section 106 delivers on that requirement, that the committee previously agreed in their previous resolution.
Right, thank you. So I've got a supplementary, if I may, Chairman. The original hostel, which the committee visited originally for the change, when it was a change of use, and it was self-evident at that time that the hostel accommodation was far more superior to what you would expect for temporary accommodation, overnight accommodation for stable personnel. Had 36 rooms. The permission is for to build 40 new rooms, is that right? Which takes us up to 76 rooms.
Well, that's sorry, Councillor.
Let me finish. So, but if we're agreeing to 123 rooms over the site, that leaves us with a balance of 47 rooms, which could be built out at some stage in the future.
That's the next application, Councillor Cole.
Sorry?
That's the next application, I think Mr. Till was going to say.
Is it?
That's the building of the...
Apologies, if I clarify this, then the current application that we're considering now is for the change of use of the hostel. Councillor Cole, you're correct in that the application that is the next item on the agenda is for an extension, which is for a further 40 rooms. And the total number between these two applications of a hotel bedrooms proposed is 76. That is correct. And that does leave a balance of rooms that are not currently built on the site or subject to either of these applications.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Viggers?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's the right place to ask rather than later on in the debate, but what would happen if we were minded to refuse this application, apart from, I assume, there being no need to even discuss the next one because the one follows from the other, doesn't it? I mean, and of course, the other possibility is that the applicant appeals, or there might be that you refer it up as being contrary to policy. So I think we need to know what we do if, otherwise, you know, there's no point in discussing this if there isn't a possible outcome of refusal. We need to know what the consequences would be.
Well, you'll note that there are two suggestions in the officer's report. One is that the legal agreement and its amendments are accepted, and the other is that they are refused. However, a further option does present itself to members, that the resolution could be to revert to the same resolution made at the 2019 committee, that the legal agreement within 3 months secures that no development of the extant hotel permission takes place, or that it's refused at that point. So members clearly would have the option to consider that third option if they weren't satisfied with either the amendment that has been put forward in this this agenda item, or the prospect of refusing without allowing the racecourse the opportunity to enter into a Section 106 relinquishing planning permission for the hotel.
Thank you for that answer, because actually I hadn't sort of internalized the full recommendation that you're making. I thought it was a recommendation for basically accepting what the applicant has asked for. Right.
Mr. Till, if as following on from Councillor Vickers, if there was a refusal, doesn't it by default go to the third option anyway?
No, it doesn't, Chairman, because the deadline in the previous resolution has expired.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that now. Councillor Cole.
So, sorry, Chairman. So, can I just clarify? Because it's expired, then the current application for the extension has lapsed. Is that right?
The current planning permission for use of the lodge as a hotel has expired, and the current resolution for construction of the extension and for the change of use of the lodge has also expired due to time elapsed.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Vickers, you've got your hand up still. Are you coming back, or you're done? And Councillor Cole's done. Wonderful. Okay, no more questions for you, Mr. Till, but we do go on now. Any questions for Mr. Goddard on his presentation with regard to the highways? No, we're all quite happy with the highways. Members, it's time to open up to the debate again, and who would like to start? Interesting one. Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say I'm irritated by this application, the subsequent one, simply because, as Councillor Barnett alluded to, this accommodation was originally for stable lads or lasses, and I can understand the concerns of the residents. However, as the update report says, there have been no complaints about noise. Well, 2 complaints historically about noise, and I think this is a bit of a tidying up exercise more than anything else. So we've really got to decide whether or not we want to revisit this now and approve these this application, the subsequent one, or stick with what we've currently got. My view is that we tidy it up, but I'm also concerned about the outstanding balance of rooms.
Thank you. Anyone else to make a contribution? Well, is that the end of the debate? If it is, then you've got some soul searching to do here as to where we're going to take this. We haven't had a proposal, whether we're going to accept or anyone's considering refuse. We've had a tidying up, or we go back to the original option.
Chairman, I propose that we accept officer recommendation because we are where we are.
It's very early. Can I hold you there, Councillor Cole? I'll take that as a proposal because a bit more interest is coming now from Councillor Wollaston, and I'll take 2 more, Councillor Wollaston, Councillor Vickers. Then I'll take your proposal unless somebody's got another view. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I was proposing to second the proposal.
Thank you. That's good. Right, so we're on there. And Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I was going to suggest, but not formally propose, that I think we should seriously consider the option of staying as we were and basically throwing this out and sticking with the previous agreement. But
okay,
how it goes with you've now got a proposal seconded, so let's see how that goes.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, I deliberately stayed out of the debate because I was going to listen to comments around the table. I'm inclined actually to agree with Councillor Vickers in this occasion. So I would probably vote against the proposal that's likely to be put on the table in a minute. But we will see how that progresses before obviously coming back.
Thank you. Well, I have a proposal. I'm prepared to. Councillor Moore, thank you.
Sorry, just for those of us who haven't been quite so steeped in this over such a long time. So if we reject the recommendation of officers, which on the one hand grants planning permission and on the other hand refuses, depending upon the outcome of the 106 negotiations, as I understand it, what then happens? Could somebody clarify that for me?
Mr. Till.
Right. Okay. So in the event that the current proposal is carried, then the Section 106 agreement would secure a maximum of 123 hotel bedrooms. If it isn't, then an alternative proposal may come forward. The alternative proposal suggested by Councillor Vickers is a reversion to the previous committee resolution to secure via the Section 106 that the 123 bedroom hotel is not developed on the site. and to allow 3 months or subject to chairman's agreement, such a suitable period as to secure that legal agreement. Or if that legal agreement isn't agreed by the racecourse, then to refuse the application. Or the third option, should that also not be carried, would be to refuse the applications outright.
Thank you. Therefore, I do have a proposer, Councillor Cole, and a seconder, Councillor Wollaston, and that is for a recommendation for Head of Planning and Countryside be authorised to grant this application 18/03340 at the racecourse at Greenham. And Mrs. Mayor, would you conduct that name vote, please?
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
For.
Councillor Barnett.
Against.
Councillor Bennyworth.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Culver.
Against.
Councillor Vickers.
Against.
Councillor Wollaston. Sorry, Councillor Wollaston.
My apologies. For.
And Chair, Councillor Hooker.
I'm for, thank you.
That motion is carried 5-3.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved, and therefore we can go along to our fourth application before the committee this evening, again at the lodge at Newbury, and this is for the erection of a 3-storey extension to the front elevation of the lodge to provide additional rooms. And for this, this again, I think has come to because of 10 letters of objection from the public and has been brought back to the committee. Am I right, Mr. Till, on this due to the alteration to the proposed terms of the Section 6 legal agreement? That is correct. Thank you. Mr. Till, if you'd like to make that presentation to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, can I confirm that you can see my screen?
I can now. Thank you.
Thank you.
The site view. Yep. Site plan.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this application is the accompanying application to the previous, which was for the change of use of the Racecourse Lodge, and is for an extension of the lodge to provide an additional 40 hotel bedrooms, making a total of 76 on the site. Like the change of use application, it was previously brought to committee in 2019 with a recommendation of approval due to receiving 10 letters of objection, and the committee resolved to approve subject to the conditions and to a Section 106 agreement securing that the extant hotel permission is not developed. Therefore, this application comes to you for exactly the same reason, to consider alteration to the terms of the Section 106 legal agreement, restricting the number of hotel bedrooms on the site to no more than 123. In terms of the proposals, the key things to note are the extension would be to the north of the existing lodge. It would be of similar design to the existing lodge and would retain the same height of the roof. It is not a self-contained building and would be reliant on the lodge for reception, lobby, bar and office accommodation. Highways were consulted and concluded that the proposals would not result in an undue loss of parking provision, and conditions are recommended in respect of both construction management and the provision of surface water drainage measures. In terms of objections, concerns were raised with the impact of the works on the amenity of residents from Horse Walk and Chatham House, but officers are of the view that while the works would intensify the use of the site as a hotel, in light of the lack of objection from environmental health, and I should draw your attention at this point to the update sheet, which again confirms as of today that only two complaints have been received by environmental health, the last being in 2016. The low number of complaints and this level of impact would not be unacceptable within a mixed commercial and residential use of the site. where such land uses as a hotel could be expected. Concerns were also raised in terms of the potential for overlooking of Rocking Horse Nursery to the west of the site, but this is approximately 35 metres from the proposed extension, and officers' view is that overlooking would be no worse than the existing relationship between the lodge and the nursery. Members, in light of the previous resolution to approve and officers' view that the alteration of the Section 106 would not result in any significant material change to the existing situation with planning permission for 123 bedroom hotel versus an allowed limit of up to 123 bedrooms, and subject to planning permission being sought for any additional hotel accommodation. Your officer's recommendation, as given in Part 8 of the report, is for approval subject to the conditions set out in the agenda and the terms of the Section 106 agreement, or if the Section 106 agreement is not agreed subject to those terms, then the application is refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Till. And quickly on to Mr. Goddard. Any more to add on this, Mr. Goddard, with the extension?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. There are some highway comments in your section 4.1 of your report. You will note that your highway officers did raise concern about the level of parking available within the site with the proposal on race days. Non-race days, clearly not a problem. However, you will see from the report that the applicants have given us assurances that they have a very effective car park management system in place that should ensure that parking is managed and that there is sufficient parking for this proposal on race days. And therefore, I think we're satisfied with this assurance and have no objection.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. We now go on to the submissions from the public, and we have nothing from the councils, but we do have one from an objector, Mr. Beard again. So, Mrs. Legg, could we hear the submission from Mr. Beard?
Certainly, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. So this is Mr. Beard's objection. Once the lodge is extended to 76 bedrooms, there are no properly assessed planning grounds to retain the right to a 123-bed hotel or any other hotel at the racecourse site. It makes no sense to build on the site of the presently permitted hotel between the grandstand and the central area apartments or anywhere else. Another hotel with only up to 47 bedrooms, unless its purpose is also to be a public house and restaurant utilising the current premises licence. In any event, such a second hotel has never been envisaged. It would be ridiculous still to build the 123-bedroom hotel between the grandstand and the central area apartments and leave the extended lodge as a redundant building with no sensible alternative purpose. The 76-bedroom hotel building could never revert back to being just a racing-related hostel. The justified suspicion is that this application, if successful, is a precursor to another application at any time in the future to further enlarge the lodge, taking up much, if not all, of the retained permission for up to 123 bedrooms. If so, that permission and the proposed Section 106 agreement would have the effect of avoiding the need to justify more hotel accommodation on this site. Even if you are assured that will not happen, there are no binding guarantees under the terms the officer recommends. The history of the lodge gives support to that happening. From the outset, the lodge was only to be a hostel, as confirmed when in 2014 permission to vary its design was granted. Next, as soon as it was built, there followed the temporary 3-year planning consent for hotel use on non-race days, when you were told by the CEO that they had not secured the finances to proceed with the construction of the permitted 123-bedroom hotel. That temporary use was continuing when the current 2 applications were made, both with the unequivocal commitment to abandon the 123-bedroom hotel, which was repeated at your July 2019 meeting. Now yet another change of intention is before you. While the officer requires certain concerns of residents to be regarded for planning purposes, it is a legitimate planning consideration that residents of the new housing on the racecourse site should be entitled to to expect the development scheme to proceed as it was envisaged and permitted, particularly as it is still ongoing, and that the commercial interests of the Newbury Racecourse should not be the determining factor for any major changes that may adversely affect residents' lives. Furthermore, the outcome of this application, if approved, is that your committee will have deprived itself at any time in the future of insisting on a full planning process to support the need for more hotel accommodation anywhere on the racecourse site. The Newbury Racecourse, having elected not to build the permitted 122-bedroom hotel, will be an unfair fetter on future decision-making and manifestly unjust to affected residents opposed to such a scheme. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Berg. Any questions of Mr. Beard? No. Mr. Beard, if you're in the waiting room, thank you very much for your two presentations to this evening, and particularly the last one. We have no questions for you, so I will not be inviting you into the meeting. So we have no submissions from any supporters, and we don't have any submissions from the applicant. I wonder, Councillor Barnett, have you anything to add for this application?
Well, I did indicate that I was hoping to...
Just a minute, Mr. Barnett.
Sorry.
Just in case you say yes, I don't want you to sort of have a little prelude run on this. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. When you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll give you some indication as before at 4 when you're ready, Councillor.
Okay, so, sorry about the confusion, because I think there was confusion regarding whether one was going to be a combined, and then it was made clear it should be separate. So yes, I've got separate. I mean, members, I think we're now in a completely different ballpark. You know, there's a lot more accommodation available in and around Newbury than ever before, and of course, there's less people travelling, even taking in the COVID situation in consideration. There's been a lot less people travelling in the last year or so. There's likely to be a lot less travellers, professional reps and all the rest of it that are obviously travelling from north to south, east to west, with obviously Newbury area in that particular point. And are they in the future going to be requiring overnight accommodation? And I think the question we need to ask ourselves is that access to this particular site is via a bridge. It's not quite that straightforward. It's access down from Hamridge Road over the bridge into the rear of the site. And I think you'll find a lot of overnight accommodation requirement is going to be by people that are thinking it's better to stay at a travel lodge or stay on a Premier Inn on the major road network than actually coming into around the back of the racecourse. And therefore, you know, I think the only time when the excess amount of accommodation is going to be required is special events or race days. Now, we've heard from Mr. Till that there's only been 2 actual request for investigation of noise and disturbance. I can assure you as a ward member, I've been called on many occasions over the last 2 or 3 years of disturbance at the back of this complex before it's obviously considered for extension. So you can be rest assured that the local residents have been affected by this present accommodation at this particular time. So it might be a case that it's not recorded. I can assure it definitely has. I think the other point that was made regarding the Rocking Horse Nursery, and I think, you know, okay, one would argue that it's not directly there on the doorstep. It is a little bit round the corner. And of course, nursery is not always daytime. Sometimes accommodation is required for the infants out of hours. So one doesn't want to combine, you know, out of hours or weekends drinking outside an accommodation that could affect youngsters. Furthermore, I think the comment which Mr. Goddard said in relationship to the parking, I think that is one of the big issues that I think will have to be very closely addressed, because if if it is the case that it goes through, and if it's a case that the accommodation is maximum capacity, then of course, consequently, you could have a large number of vehicles, and it could affect on residents parking, which is very restricted, very much part of the conditions of the parking. It's not a certain amount of parking available at the best of times, and I think it could be a case that that could be a really major issue for the local residents. I'll stop at that point, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Members, any questions of Councillor Barnett? Councillor Cole.
Yes, Councillor Barnett. I'm just curious with regard to disturbance on the site. You said that as ward member, you've been made aware of a lot of disturbance at the hotel. So my question is, did you report this, or did you advise your residents to report this? Because if people don't report it, we can only go on the information that's given to us by environmental health.
You're absolutely spot on, Councillor Cole. It has been brought to my attention, and I advise them on which direction to take the complaint, because on many occasions when I've reported things third hand, it might not be exactly what was seen or witnessed by certain people. So I've tried to endeavour to get them to speak. On one particular occasion, it does come to my knowledge, which was just over a year and a half ago, latter part of 2019, on one particular event. I've got the feeling it was actually the Hennessy weekend, that it was, you know, various things were noted, and unfortunately, several of the residents said they had already notified environmental health back in the early part of the summer, and it's a bloody waste of time, was the comment made to me. I said, well, I'm sorry, you do need to take a recording. You need to actually identify what was the noise, what was the disturbance, what was the problem, and you know, it's not necessarily all noise. Certain individuals that have either won a large sum of money, or, of course, have lost a large sum of money, could well be in a position of less inhibited than most, and local residents' gardens become a situation of the local latrines, and perhaps I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any more questions of Councillor Barnett? No, apologies to the public for the digression there on Councillor Barnett's report, and to those members of the public listening. Right, we'll move on now. Any questions of Mr. Till? No, we're all quite happy with Mr. Till's presentation. Do we have any questions of Mr. Goddard on his submission on planning on the highways? Mr. Till, can you just inform me, please, this position now of parking and race day, can you clarify that for me, please? If the hotel's full, is there enough parking for the people actually staying at the hotel? Is the priority for hotel people? And can you clarify for me, if people come to the race day, is that car park area normally available to them? What is the conflict here, please, on the race day parking issue?
Councillor Hooker, can I suggest that that may be more appropriate for Mr. Goddard to answer?
Goddard, I do apologise. Yeah, it was Mr. Goddard, yeah, on the highways, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Referring back to my notes, there should be, according to the calculations from the Newbury Racecourse, a surplus of 20 spaces.
Thank you.
On a race day, with the hotel occupied, and it certainly didn't provide any evidence to me that there was a shortfall. I think it's getting close to a shortfall, but there's not enough evidence to me to say to you there is a shortfall and we should recommend refusal. I think by the figures provided by the Newbury Racecourse, there is a surplus still with both uses underway.
Thank you. Thanks. That's clarified that for me. Members, we'll move on. The debate. Who'd like to start the debate on this extension to the hotel, please? Councillor Vickers, well done.
I was waiting for others, but I have got a bit to say on this. I mean, I don't see much point in refusing this, having lost the battle on the last one. I do feel that having a hotel as opposed to 123 beds in however many hotels you want scattered around the entire site, which we've now actually got, well, at least 47 could go absolutely anywhere at any time, it would seem. The solution of to have most of them in one place will make it less likely that we'll get another lot, because a 47 bed hotel, let alone anything split up into smaller pieces, is probably not viable to manage. But maybe, you know, that'll turn into apart hotels, which is, well, quite a possibility. I wouldn't want to put the idea into the racecourse's heads.
You may have done.
About the racecourse and its hotel operation, and generally about its operations as a whole, I'm coming increasingly having, you know, I'm really disappointed, because I was the one that actually proposed at a Western Area Planning Committee in 2009 that this is an excellent housing site because it's sustainability. It's become apparent that the racecourse really is only interested in the housing as a cash cow. They are not interested in providing a community, and they're not really interested in providing footfall in Newbury town centre. So having a load of hotel beds on the racecourse itself will mean it's far less likely that visitors to the races spend time in the delightful old town of Newbury. I'm very sad about that, but I don't see how in planning, through planning, we can change that, because we have the planning application as it is, as it stands before us. It'll be a battle that have to be fought, I'm afraid, between Green and Parish Council and to some extent Newbury Town Council over the years in the future, because it's clear that the racecourse regards themselves as an entertainment business with housing on the side. And although it's a strategic housing site in our planning policy, it is not becoming a community as far as I'm concerned. That's
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
I don't disagree with anything that Councillor Vickers has said, but we did approve a permission previously for these extra 40 bedrooms with a previous section 106. So I see we have no alternative but to actually approve this application. I do worry about where the balance of the 47 rooms would be built out should the racecourse ever decide to build them. But I do think some of this is down to sort of piecemeal development and not really well thought out business plan of the racecourse more than anything else, because they should have thought about the implications of the investment in a larger hotel before now. So they've scrambled to cobble together a hotel right from the stable lads and lasses accommodation rather than actually invest in anything more. But we are where we are, so I propose that we approve this application. And we'll
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Oh, we got somebody else on the debate. Do I have a seconder first?
I'll second that.
Councillor Moore, thank you. That's good. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Councillor Bennyworth, thank you. Did you want
Councillor Moore, you stole my thunder. I was just about to follow up there.
Okay.
But, Chairman, I just also like to echo Councillor Cole's comments there. Also, come back to Councillor Barnett's point about the commercial viability of this project. That's purely, as far as I'm concerned, a consideration for the applicant, and there it rests.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think this situation of the management and the business plan of this venture was discussed at the last meeting, I remember, and this whole business of the 20 million for the hotel, and you know, they couldn't afford it and all this sort of stuff. And I think we questioned at the time this business of that should have been sorted out at the early stages, and the money should have been made available and gone down that route. But that's not for us to question. But we do have a proposer of Councillor Cole and a seconder of Councillor Moore. And as long as Mr. Tilt and Mrs. Mayor are happy that the discussion's okay and there's nothing to add to this application in terms of conditions or whatever. I think it's as it stands. The recommendation is for Head of Planning Countryside be authorised to grant this planning application 18/03343 for the permanent use of a hostel as a hotel. Mrs. Mayor, would you conduct the name vote, please?
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
For.
Councillor Barnett.
Against.
Councillor Bennyworth.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For, but can we just check the application number, because I thought Councillor the chairman referred to application 18/03340, and that was item 3 on the agenda.
I do apologise if I've got the wrong number.
Approving application number 19/00225, COMIND.
Thank you. It should be 19/00225/COMIND. Thank you for. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely.
So for item 4 on the agenda, and that's application number 4.
Councillor Culver.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
Against.
Councillor Wollaston.
For.
And Chair.
For. Thank you. Members?
Carried 6-2.
Thank you very much. That application again is approved. Before we go, Mr. Till, any observations on any appeals that the committee needs to know about?
2 matters of appeals of note. You've been provided with an appeal summary with your agenda, and I'd like to draw particular attention to firstly the Theobald Drive appeal, where the inspector stated strong support for the principle of maintaining green infrastructure in the district, and that's something that we see far too much of an erosion of often. So it was good to see support for that. And the second is the Inglewood Cottage application, where the inspector provided some particularly helpful comments in respect of interpretation of policy on extension, on replacement dwellings and extensions to dwellings in the countryside, and the interpretation in particular of proportionality as far as that issue is concerned. So I think those 2 are of particular note within the appeals summary, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Till. I think it gives the committee confidence, because we discussed Inglewood at length and we came to that resolution. So thank you very much. Councillor Cole.
Sorry, Chairman. Just to say, Mr. Till, can you just pass on to, I think it's Mr. Dre who produces these appeal summaries. Thanks to him for such a comprehensive summary. And it's quite useful for members to see the decisions district-wide. It's not just confined to the Western area, but also the appeal decisions referring to the Eastern area. And I think it's really helpful for members to get these really quite full explanations, which may help with their decision making in future planning committees. So can you pass on? I do say thank you when I see him, but can we record our thanks for this comprehensive report? It's really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, and I'd like to support that as well, because those reports are very, very useful, and they've been coming now for a while. And as I say, it does clarify things and a good educational tool as well for us all.
Agreed, Chairman. I'd like. Could I just ask? It does appear, Chairman, that we've had a great rash of appeal decisions coming through from.
Yeah.
Is it true, Mr. Till, that through you, Chairman, that they are now in the process of catching up with things? Because they were getting behind, weren't they?
I think, Councillor Vickers, that the inspectorate, like most public bodies, has struggled to incorporate COVID-dependent procedures, and they now have quite an effective system operating for public inquiries and hearings on a virtual basis, and the knock-on effect on that on all appeals has been to allow some catching up to start to take place on appeals. I think they're still behind, but quite a bit less behind than they were.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Thank you, Mr. Till. Members, a very interesting evening, a very interesting debates on a wide issues tonight, and thank you all very much for your contribution. Thank you, Mrs. Legg, for looking after us, and Mr. Oliver for looking after the issues, and officers for your contribution. Councillor Moore, very quickly, please.
Yes, I'm aware of the time. I just wanted to raise the back to the first application. The universal agreement, I think, around the room was that the objections were not relevant to the application that we were looking at. And I wondered whether there was what the process of discretion was for deciding whether the objections were relevant and therefore whether the thing needed to come to committee. If we put a motion to commit to council, it has to be relevant to the needs of West Berkshire. Surely there might be some sort of discretion in these sort of circumstances.
Mrs. Mayor, is this an opportune time to do this, or should this be done outside this meeting, please?
Please, no.
I think
not now.
It's definitely not for now. My understanding is these matters are being considered.
Thank you very much. So with that, again, thank you all very much. And at 9:37, I will close the meeting, and we'll just respect our protocol until such time as the meeting is stopped being broadcast. Thank you, members.